commence with the second session, which is the plenary of this 2 day training workshop on ethics and sustainability of artificial intelligence in higher education, jointly organized by the National Open University of Nigeria and, of course, the University of Notredame. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we open up this page, I would like to invite Dr. Adetola, one of our research team member here, who will be reading the citation of the next paper presenter, Professor Nuno Moniz. So, Dr. Adetola, please. Please invite our presenter.
I would like to invite Professor Nuno Moniz. Professor Nuno Moniz is an associate research professor at the Lucy Family Institute for Data and Society. He is also the director of the Notredame IBM Technology Ethics Lab and the associate director of the Data Inference Analytics and Learning DAL Lab. Moniz, who joined the University of Notredame in 2022, is an expert on machine learning, investigating challenges such as imbalance learning and rare event detection, data privacy, and model interpretability, for which he has won multiple awards internationally. He is particularly interested in interdisciplinary efforts to understand the real-world impact of automated systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you today. I didn't flew from the US. I flew from Portugal, so I'm more or less on the same time zone, which is good. And I want to start by thanking the hospitality of everyone at the National Open University of Nigeria. This has been a very interesting ride and collaboration, and I want to thank Professor Helen and Felix and Tesh for this wonderful work. It's inspiring work. I have to say that you would think that researchers in AI and ethics coming together and trying to expand discussion on AI and ethics would be very common worldwide. Sure, it is, not at this scale. And this is a very big endeavor that you have set out and successfully finished. And I want to congratulate you and ask for a round of applause to you all. My name is Moniz, as I was presented. I don't know if the slides are okay. I'm an associate research professor with the Lucy Family Institute, which my friend Nitesh Shawala is the founding director, and the director for the Notredame IBM Tech Ethics Lab. And I'll be honest, coming here, I was, so it's my first time in Africa, by the way. Thank you for hosting me and the honor of being the ones to host it. But I was coming here and I was trying to decide which facet of my work would be best to share with you. And it just dawned on me that what I really wanted to do today was less talk about just my work, but also share a reflection with you, which is this duality always in technology and artificial intelligence in specific. This duality between need and the possibilities. Do we need a technology? What do we need AI for? That is imperative. If we don't have AI, it won't work. Or is AI something that enhances us as humans, as societies, that bridges disciplines and efforts, allows us to go further than we've gone before? This is a very interesting discussion because I think it tells us a lot about the world today and our efforts today worldwide. It has come to my attention that I'm overly critical of artificial intelligence. I do not agree. Simply because you treasure what you love. And I do love this field. I love this challenge. And when you love something, you treasure it. You respect it, and you're very honest with it. You're very honest about the limitations, its potential, and you try to be sometimes critical, of course, but always hopeful. And this is what is my approach to AI in general, which I think sometimes when we look at the news, what's happening internationally, the use of AI everywhere, in the news, in screens everywhere, it starts to look a bit like salt in the food. Something that you sprinkle to make it look nice. This is the part where you lose me in terms of AI and its potential. I don't think AI is something that you sprinkle on a technology to make it taste good. And it really touches me on a soft spot. My father always taught me to be very, not angry, but to on a dislike for unfulfilled promise. I do not like that. And I think a lot of time when we endeavor on these sprinklish of AI to make things good, we're betraying the promise of AI. Because this is not what I envision in terms of the necessity or the potential for AI. It's not about having a toothbrush that is AI powered, that will tell you how you're brushing your teeth. I think we have very much more urgent problems that we need to solve, and we need to get our heads in the game. I don't know if you ever heard this name of Shannon, Claude Shannon. He's actually one of the people that coined the term of artificial intelligence. But he was mostly known by his features, his feat in information theory, so theory of communication. And in 56, I believe, he wrote this paper, very short paper, called The Bandwagon. This was at a time, maybe 15 years after information theory rose as a very important field in mathematics. And everyone was using it, the concept of entropy, for example, using entropy for everything. Just sprinkle a bit of entropy there and it will give you something new. He wrote this thing where he was basically calling everyone to calm it down, recognize that information theory is very important but is not all encompassing, and leaving a warning. By doing that, you're sabotaging yourself in the future because you're reducing the level of expectation of promise and completion of that promise for the future generations. And so, do I need AI, or can AI help to solve a problem? It's something that I always have in my mind while working in this space. And when I'm working in this space, this is what I really like to keep very present. These are the type of problems that are urgent, and that AI can serve a purpose, an urgent purpose, a singular purpose in trying to solve. It's not deterministic, but it can try to solve. It's about education all over the world. It's about curing very difficult diseases, curing cancer. It's about sustainability, the health of our oceans and our water. It's about agriculture and food. It's about giving us a chance to move forward in a better way than we are today, and not necessarily to have a beautiful toothbrush. I don't know if you know a lot about the history of AI as a concept. Um, this photo is usually used as a description of its seminal moment. It's a workshop in Dartmouth College in New Hampshire in the US. A proposal made by four of these distinguished researchers coining the term of AI and really creating this new revanche that splintered and combined a lot of other areas. AI is not particularly the concept, overall concept wasn't that new here. It had already been discussed in the 40s in the UK with the name of machine intelligence. So it was a growth that landed in this culminating moment, if you mind. But it's rather funny that still today, this question is a very important question. What is artificial intelligence? It is a very interesting question, mainly because there's no agreement on a definition for artificial intelligence. There are different definitions. Some of them touch on cognitive aspects. Some of them is more the computational side. Some of them touch on biology. Some of them say that you don't need the biological component. And at the end of the day, this actually is a problem related to the concept of intelligence itself. Dagmar Monet is a professor at the University of Berlin. She did this amazing study. I always talk about this study because I think it's really unique. She did this monstrous work of collecting the definitions of machine intelligence, human intelligence, just intelligence, and got them all together and asked a certain group of people to catalog them. Catalog them or label them in terms of the ones that sound more true to you of what intelligence is. And it was a varied group, not only scholars, so people that didn't have higher education and whatnot. And this was the definition that got the largest intergroup agreement. I won't read it all, but I want to single out this last phrase that is there. Rather, it reflects a broader and deeper capability for comprehending our surroundings, catching on, making sense of things, or figuring out what to do. This is intuition. This is an intuition, a dimension that I feel speaks very true to me in terms of what intelligence is, and something that is difficult to simulate or emulate in a machine. Now, as for AI, John McCarthy, which is one of the founding people or scholars in the concept of AI, had this definition later on in his life, 2007, that the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, intelligent computer programs. And here you see, similar to the task of using computers to understand human intelligence, but not needing to be confined in the biologically observable. So it kind of grows and demonstrates its full potential in things like data science and not necessarily just on the biological. Won't bore you with a lot of where AI came from and when, but I just want to say that the concept of AI and the field of AI has experienced several ups and lows through the years, mainly bumping into issues of computational capability, lack of data, simply the grounding of the ideas that were explored at a given time either weren't sufficient or just hit against the real world implications of it. They didn't work in the real world. But we're now in a different phase. This quote unquote spring or summer that we've seen since the turn of the millennium hasn't budged. And it introduces an interesting question. This is just to illustrate how the field has grown. This is the number of papers published in the 3 top conferences in AI, and this goes until 2002, I think, and it has continued to grow. But there's an interesting question, important question to put, which is, why is this summer different? Of course, we have immense data with the internet coming up, sensors making us able to access a trove of data that simply wasn't a capability or ability before. Compute all of that, but there's a singular difference there that I think is very important: private investment. It's not about money; it's about private money. What's the current market investment, the expectation of AI? And I really do think that this is something that we need to consider when we look at the discussions around AI, its capabilities, and especially the way that it's presented to us in mainstream media and the television and what's not. The hype of AI is something to really pause. If you look at some of the estimations, for example, McKinsey had an estimation for generative AI that until I think it was 2030, it would grow to mean something between 2 to 5 or 4 exactly trillion dollars worldwide. Now, on the other hand, you have economists basically saying you need to pause yourself on those estimations and be a bit grounded, sounding some alarms on those expectations. By the way, it's not there, but that alarm by the MIT economist is actually Asimoglu, the economist that won the Nobel Economy or Economical Sciences award this year. Now, given all of this, AI has immense promise, which is something that I really think we should be focusing on. And it certainly has presented to us Nobel Awards, conservation of wildlife, in health, curing or being able to detect diseases that before were much harder to detect. But we're also facing a lot of challenges, and I really want to speak about those. I think there are 3 fundamental challenges with AI that we as a community, not just the AI community, but all of us together should be concerned about. Which is essentially translated as the cost of AI. Now, to build AI is not to perform some act of magic, especially when we're talking about modern AI tools like the ones that we were just discussing and that the project here at the Open University was researched. To build a tool like ChatGPT, you need a lot of resources of minerals that are extracted. A lot of them here in this continent are the main source of it. We need to label a lot of data, for which I should say a lot of that work is done here in this continent. And we have an issue that we really need to look into, which is the operation of AI, which raises a serious concern in terms of its sustainability and impact in terms of the environment. These are old figures. Just for you to have an idea of what this means, training one GPT model 5 years ago would be the equivalent of the energy that 120 houses in the US, with a lot of things in there always turned on and what's not, would spend. 120 houses. Or 100, 110 cars per year. So you just turn on the car, put some gas pump in there, let it run for 100 for the 12 months. That will be the equivalent of the emissions. And that brings me to something that it's a law, and it's something that I always keep in the back of my mind. This is not on AI, this is technology generally. We tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short run, so we look at the immediate. And we don't disregard it completely, but we seriously underestimate, or we don't pay enough attention to its impacts in the middle and the long run. And I would say that this is a main reason why we should really talk about responsible AI, about ethics in AI, and explore this. And regardless of you being an AI researcher on the fundamentals of AI, these are things that you really need to consider ethically about your work. Now, there's no shared definition of responsible AI also. It's a critical aspect of modern AI. Different things for different people. This is a definition I'm comfortable with. A set of techniques, practice, and methodology, intending that the design, development, and deployment maintenance of AI-based systems are built and done in a certain way that tries to relieve or minimize the negative impacts of these tools. I would just say that there's, I wouldn't say conflicting, but very different views on responsible AI sometimes. One very technical. It's about the methods. You need explainability methods. You need interpretability or interpretable models, etc. But there's another approach, which is looking at AI as a social technical device that has its presence in the real world. So we need to be considered also, or we need to consider also how they're used, their impacts in education and culture, etc. And I want to plug my work at this time. A year and a half ago, or almost 2 years now, when I joined the Tech Ethics Lab, I was contacted and said, hey, there's a professor from Croatia that is here. She wants to talk to you. She works in memory modulation. Now, I didn't know what memory modulation was, but it sounded interesting. I really wanted to learn something from that. And so we had lunch, and I found out memory modulation essentially, for example, in post-conflict moments, there's a need to restructure history, or how the history of that conflict is told, so that societies can move on. And so you change textbooks in education, you change museums, you change public furniture, creating statues and what's not, that you create a collective memory, a new collective memory that encompasses those events. At some point in that lunch, I asked her, to what an extent large language models such as ChatGPT are capable of modulating, of changing our perception of the past. And this actually led to a project at the intersection, or an interdisciplinary effort at this intersection between memory, history, and technology. And my first challenge was, as a computer scientist, was just understanding this difference between memory and history, figuring out that methods, nature, everything is not everything, but it's completely different. Some more subjective, some trying to be more objective. That there's our tensions, that subjective memories may collide with collective ones, or even the written or the historian's account of these events. And at some point we were asking, why is ChatGPT different? Why would it be different? We have books, we have photos, we have cameras. So since the dawn of the ages, we found ways to keep track of our memories. What is different? And the main idea here is, especially with generative AI, we are no longer the only presumers of history. Presumers in the sense of simultaneously being producers and consumers of history. Now, these systems are able, even if rather slightly or non-slightly, to give you accounts of history that can be consumed that may not be exactly true. And when these sources and these tools grow in terms of popularity, even seeming like authoritative sources, we have a problem brewing. Something that even goes beyond the technical, something that we really need to engage and address interdisciplinarily. The relevance of this kind of hits you directly. This is basically a problem that goes beyond these the traditional institutions that hold history. We're talking about an interactive and dynamic memory, not one that is written, quote unquote, in stone or textbooks. We have this issue of the presumer, or no longer being the only presumers, the clashes between global and other diverse perspectives, and of course ethical implications. And so what we did was very simple. We developed a methodology to understand what is the history that is told by ChatGPT concerning Portuguese, for historical conflicts. The US-Vietnam War, former Yugoslavia, the Portuguese colonial wars, and Israel-Palestine. So different types of conflicts, one still ongoing, others no longer. And we wanted to look at these two dimensions. First, language. So if we ask the telling of history in a language, and then we shift to another language, are we getting the same account? And the second dimension, which is the direction of memory. The first, we asked, what's the first event going and building the history until the last event? And then the second version, what's the last event and going back to the first? This was very important for us to understand exactly the abilities of recollection of memory and history from these tools. This is the protocol, essentially what I was telling you. We then added some qualitative questions, more the primary and most numerous victims, main causes for the analyzed conflict, and sources, bibliography. And from my end, knowing the technical aspect and the foundations of these tools, it was obvious that the underlying probabilities of figuring out or predicting the next word and then the next word and the next word, if you shift languages, those probabilities won't be the same. And three things really popped out in terms of an analysis of these historical accounts. The first, significant errors. Some call hallucinations, let's keep it at errors. Not only the key dates, but also inventing battles and battle names, having chronological leaps, so really jumping a few years and not accounting for important events in that space. For example, in the Portuguese colonial wars, depending on the language or the direction of memory, the historical account would focus on a single country. We'll look at Angola in one, another would look only at Guinea, another would mix Mozambique with Guinea, and so it was an interesting finding. Then language inconsistencies, of course, shifting the language, different account of history, and sometimes these were big, these were considerable. And then a part that is particularly concerning to me, the oversimplification. History is a very difficult business. I feel for my historian friends and memory studies friends. It's working on a lot of times in the subjective. It's analyzing facts, but also looking at this causality. What is the sequence of these events and what leads one to the other? This is a very difficult discussion to have. And some of the things that is very important to avoid, for example, are things such as presentism. You don't look at history from the lenses of today. You try to understand the conditions, the material conditions, the subjective conditions on the time that this history is unfolding so that you have a proper understanding of its evolution. Not the case with these systems. Are usually very presentist and very trying to equate or to balance the role and the importance of all sides involved in the conflicts, which sometimes leads to very strange narratives. These are, it's unreadable, it's just for decoration, if you might. These are results from asking in Croatian, in English, and Serbian the casualties in the former Yugoslavia wars. In English, we have between 140 to 200,000 killed. In Croatian, more or less 130, 140, so not that much different. If you ask in Serbian, you have 100,000 in Bosnia, 20,000 in Croatia, 13,000 in Kosovo. No information on the Serbs. And when we look at this in context, when we look at the massive use of these tools and these results, now we're talking about implications. Now we should really start to understand what is the impact if you imagine kids 13, 14 years old today getting their first stab at understanding conflicts like these, not asking of the teacher, but instead going to ChatGPT and getting their first set of information, which is very critical on these events from there. Now you have the possibility of having a very conflicting account of history in classroom. You have issues on perception of your culture and those events and the impact of them in your society that may give rise to tensions that were already solved. And also, we feel, opens an avenue for cognitive warfare, things like cognitive warfare, because we know that these tools are somewhat nudgeable in small events. So you can, as an adversarial actor, change or try to change several parts of those conflicts. So can these potential problems be solved? Of course they can. I really think they can, but not by computer scientists alone. And I put this picture there just to illustrate. We had a meeting of this project in Croatia a few months ago. And while we were discussing some of these things, on the top of the table, I thought, I have the solution for this. Very easy. We'll just figure out a way for the narrative in each language to be the same. Interlanguage consistency, I said. My historian friends turned to me in not very polite terms, but not aggressive, saying, no, you do not do that. History changes. If you change the language, you will have different perspectives. This was a Portuguese friend of mine, and he was telling me, you do not expect that the historiography of the Portuguese colonial wars will be the same as the one in Mozambique, Angola, or Guinea. So you cannot do that because it will flatten history towards the history that has more data, that is more represented in academic terms, bibliography terms. we actually this led to an interesting discussion on interlanguage uh, diversity instead of consistency. And so I do think that solve may be a difficult or a strong word, but we can minimize the effects of this technology. We have very excellent research going on transparency and responsibility, ethical guidelines, some of the things that were discussed in the report. We have the really important and urgent needs to train, to better train our students in interdisciplinary work, because some of those big challenges come up at the intersection of disciplines. And um, I want to look particularly at education because it was already mentioned today. We have evidence of decreasing cognitive function, critical thinking, in terms of its ability to avoid cognitive biases or objective situational analysis. Um, but these asymmetries, or there are asymmetries in the access to education, not only global majority and minority, but also rural and urban. And the question here is, can AI help bring education to all? And a very much more difficult question, which is, what is the value of education today when it's embedded with AI? What is the value of a teacher? What is the role of a teacher in that new world? What is the role, or how should students, quote unquote, behave in that reality? I do think AI can be a singular piece in transforming this reality for education worldwide. But to achieve that, we need cooperation, not necessarily the competition. We need knowledge sovereignty. We need everyone to have the knowledge on how to do that at the risk of essentially unlocking the potential or some potential of AI, but at the cost of furthering essentially the neo-colonial relationships. And so this is something that we really need to start thinking. I really do think that we have already started. The efforts worldwide on this discussion are there. I think the project from the National University uh, gave a singular contribution to this. I really enjoyed the results that you had. I think they're profound and point us in some of the directions that we should really take action, immediate action. And again, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to being with you here and sharing this reflection. This is some of the students attached there of the team that I collaborate with. This is the team for the Croatia project. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Very distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, we are grateful to this workshop. This is a very interactive session and it's increasingly interesting. And so I invite you to give another round of applause for that wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, Professor Nuno, Moniz, Director, IBM Tech Ethics Lab, University of Notredame. You've done a very wonderful job, and the body language of participants here shows really that we are really digesting the meat. We are progressing now to a discussion session. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been really interactive. I want to bring in something that is not part of the events that we're having here. Can you please look at your neighbor and give a handshake, please? And ask your neighbor if he's enjoying what we're having here. Please get a feedback from your neighbor. If your neighbor to the right is not cooperating, thank you very much. If your neighbor to the right is not cooperating, please try your neighbor to the left. The Dean School of Postgraduate Studies did not do anything. He was only smiling. I didn't see him do that. And the Vice Chancellor is extending. The Godfather didn't do it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's on a lighter note. Now we want to have a discussion session, and I have the mandate of the organizers to please ask you to indicate if you have a contribution or you have a question you want to ask. I saw that my Vice Chancellor was already putting pen to paper. And I mean, the Vice Chancellor brought out this paper. Many times we attend workshops like this. People have writing material, writing pad and all of that. They just watch. Sometimes we won't sleep off. But the moment he started making his presentation, Prof, the presentation was lovely. You garnished a lot of photographs and videos and all of that and made it so interactive, interesting, increasingly. And so I know that we have noted a lot. Here we are academics, it's a university, and I know that a lot of questions are going to come in. We will begin by taking 5 responses from the participants, and then we'll respond to them as they come. When we are done with the first 5, we will proceed to have another batch. My Vice Chancellor, sir. It's it. Okay, please, I want to invite our visitors, Professor Nuno. Thank you very much, Prof. Professor Nuno, please. And yes, thank you very much, Professor Nitesh. Now, I'd like to acknowledge those who are joining us virtually. Please, I want to be very sure that you are following and enjoying whatever we are having here. If you have questions too, you can indicate from the technical crew. Once we get a hint from there, we'll give you opportunity to bear your mind, share your thoughts, or ask questions. Please, who is the first to speak to us? Prof.
Good morning, everyone. Vice Chancellor, the professors. Welcome to Nigeria and to Africa. Nice to hear that this is your first time in Africa. Yeah. And so actually, I wish to know if University of Notredame has a policy on AI usage for students. And if you have, can you share your experience with us? And also, do you have a policy for staff as well, academic staff? Thank you.
First question. I will take the Vice Chancellor.
Yes, that was a very good question. Like I don't know his name, our MC. It's usually very difficult to take notes down, but in this particular case, I took 1 or 2 things down, and I want to talk about it to him. I think what I found very interesting, which I don't know, many of us probably will not have given the thought, is the approach to this lecture that you have given. Your approach, what is AI, which is really what you said. Do I need AI? And will it help me? I really didn't ever thought I could think along this line, because it came just like a gift. And I just started using it. And perhaps that is the reason why we actually don't really know how to use it. Because if you ask yourself, do I really need AI in this that I want to do? And then you now set for yourself certain guidelines. And then you ask yourself, will it really help me in achieving what I want to do? And then before you now said, okay, let me proceed. I say this within the concept of our content development here. We need it. The first question is, do I need AI to do my work? I will ask myself, yes, I need it. Then I will now say, will it help me in achieving it. Of course, because I've used AI in literally almost anything I do these days. That's my Google now. It used to be Google of late. Now it's AI. And then you said, all right, will it help? And you found out that it helped. But the danger that we now see is that once I use it, then I hear all of you here telling me that I didn't use it rightly, or I used it wrongly, or this, and then I start having issues. So I will now go back to the question, do I really need AI? So maybe you can help us go through it that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Third hand, please.
My name is Professor Emmanuel Oswell from the Department of Religious Studies. One of the questions or concerns about AI is the takeover of the jobs for that are available. If I am a farmer and I'm using my tools to do certain jobs and AI technology takes over the job, I lose the job. If I'm a pastor preaching and AI takes the preaching pulpit and turns to preach and goes out anywhere within a split of a second and does the job, I lose my job as a pastor. And so on and so forth. So that fear of taking over the jobs, how do we intend to address this subject matter? Otherwise, many people will lose their jobs. So I think it's something that we think about. Thank you very much.
The apprehension is at an increasing rate that job losses may come as a result of disruptions from AI. So the question is, what do we do? Are we going to lose all our jobs, or is it going to open opportunities? I think that's the direction of the question. Yeah, okay. Prof.
Thank you. Over time, I've been having arguments. I've been having arguments with my friend and colleague in this university. And it's based on this. I said, yes, AI. You can use AI to do a few things, or virtually everything. But my own personal belief is this. Even if you use AI to get those things, you still have to tinker with it. Because if you ask AI to go to America from here, you get response. By the time you are reading it, will it be smooth? Won't you need to edit or do a few things about it? Must we tinker with it, or should we not tinker with it? That's what I want to know.
Yes. Do we take it hook, line, and sinker as AI generates, or we need to manipulate, maneuver, and make it more presentable?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Professor Lawal from the Faculty of Sciences. I was just looking at it that one of the reasons why we have these discussions is because of the concerns we have about AI, probably leading us to self-destruct. So I now look at it again. The basis of AI is to kind of simulate the human intelligence. And we humans are guided by principles that have guided us past so that we don't self-destruct. Is AI also guided by, or can it be guided by certain principles so that it doesn't lead us to this self-destruct? Thank you.
Lastly, for now, please can the technical crew enable virtual participants to indicate if anyone wants to share a thought. You can see Professor Godwin Sodolo. Kindly unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Okay. Thank you very much for for giving me this opportunity to contribute. First of all, I want to congratulate philosophy for playing this very important leading role in our university. AI is very, very important. It has become almost inevitable that you get to know more about it. And I'm happy that the National Open University is championing this course. I want to thank the Vice Chancellor for making it possible. But I have one worry. We are members of the National Open University of Nigeria. We are also members of the larger society. And my concern is the role of AI in the larger society, particularly the possibility of AI becoming a tool in the hands of our leaders. I say this because if you look at what has happened in the US, the new president, Donald Trump, has surrounded himself with the owners, the oligarchs, the richest men in the world, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg. These are people who are very influential. And they have a great deal of control over these new technologies. My fear is this, because it affects us. What is the guarantee, since we are talking about the ethical basis of AI, what is the guarantee that these leaders will not misapply the new technology such that even the advantages we are talking about in education, in NOUN, and so forth, will all be so small compared with the dangers that we all face. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sogolo, Emeritus Professor. We will leave it at that for now, for the first segment. We'll come back again to take more responses. But for now, please, Professor Moniz.
So in terms of policy related to generative AI, yes, the University of Notredame has worked for at least 2 years now on developing guidelines and policies, both for use as students and also use as faculty. Now, on the side of faculty, I think those are more recommendations than necessarily policy. The ability to use or not use Gen AI in classes is still a prerogative for the faculty member. I'll give you an example. In my history of AI class, I allowed students to use generative AI tools. I asked them to use them as standard references. So they need to export the chat they had to collect information and use it as a reference. Meaning, according to the code of conduct of the university and what's not, if there's any error in the interaction with these tools, you cannot come back from it. You use it as, if there's an error there, you should have checked. So that responsibility is passed on to the students. And it has worked fine. A student got an F once, he never got it again. So I don't know if I'll adapt that, but it's been my use. Vice Chancellor, on the issue of the need, I'll be very candid with you. If you look at the history of technology and its adoption, I feel that there's a broader discussion and perspective that should be had, which relates to how easy is it for an organization or a country to become dependent of a technology. And if we're talking about any country that doesn't have the structure to produce professionals that will handle that technology, that's another level of dependency. That's my concern when we're talking about need. Because if we're talking about need, there's things you're willing to overlook, rules you're willing to change, laws you're willing to change to make it happen. And that is, I would say, an ethical discussion, a very profound, even ideological discussion, and about the future of countries. The level of use or non-prepared use and adoption of these tools, just because you're running towards use them because everyone is doing, I think it's very ill-advised. I think it starts with education. So what we need, actually, we need to start there. If we start with just adopting education, it's just another neo-colonial weapon used around the world. Jobs and the centrality of work. I'll be honest, I am not an economist, but what economists say about the potential for AI disrupting jobs is very contradictory. I have no doubt that AI is already displacing work. But I will probably tell you that some of that is, for example, in media, in marketing, in communication, and creative work, and not necessarily in the large bulks of labor that occupy a society. I think it is not deterministic that it won't get there. It certainly can, but as of today, I would probably be conservative in terms of its full-blown impact. But I do think that leads to a question which I was wrapping up the intervention with on the value of education. And I think this connects rather nicely with the before last question. What I think we really need to think about what is the role of education. I mean, what makes us unique is our subjective experiences. But I could argue that a lot in the education process worldwide is about flattening those subjective experiences. It's about guaranteeing that everyone has or meets the standardized test criteria, and not necessarily something that will promote people discovering themselves, discovering by themselves. And in a world, if we're imagining a world of heavy technology, high automation and whatnot, education will be imperative to make sure that those subjective experiences and you building on them are your added value, are the things that you bring to the table, that no machine will be able to replace you. I don't see that being the way forward, but that's something that I keep in my mind as a very important topic. Very quickly, more on the technical side, more on the, if these tools are from what I understood, if these tools are fundamentally flawed, or if there are things that we can introduce to make them better. A little bit of both. I think there are certainly tools that you can use and strategies that you can deploy to ground these tools, these modern AI tools, large language models. But there are fundamental issues with how they operate that will always be the cause of hallucination/errors, wrong historical accounts, and finally, largely an impossibility or virtual impossibility of extending these technologies to underrepresented languages at the level that is decent. So those are some of the things. I mean, there's things you can solve. There are others at the foundation level that I don't think we can. Then just the role of AI in larger society. I'm a guest of the United States of America. I would very like to keep that, but I will say this, which is not unique to the United States. I think there's a fever of a sort of techno-chauvinism around the world. Technology solves everything. That is really not true. We should be very mindful in adopting that view because it leads to technocracies. This idea that technology is a good replacement for human judgment because it's neutral. It is not neutral. Never in its mind. Everyone that works in AI and has ever dealt with data bias, unfairness, etc., knows this is simply not true. And I'm not up here saying that humans don't make flaws. Certainly not. But we're accountable for them. If we make a flaw, someone comes after us. And I think that is still a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you, Nuno. And I don't have Nuno actually, raise extremely valid points. I'll quickly color some of the statements to add some perspective to the points that Nuno made, but generally we are quite a bit in agreement. On the student policy and the staff policy, yes, as you said, we actually have developed and revised our academic code of honor on using ChatGPT or other tools as part of our classrooms. And because we use Google Gmail, we have actually also recently released Gemini that faculty and staff can use for, as their for calendaring and emails and things like that. I don't use it, but that's something that's also being offered. Now, this is the irony, right? Let's sort of think about, yes, generative AI tools are an assistance to learning, but let's also understand that they are here. We can either embrace these tools or we can fight them. Fighting will not get us anywhere in terms of classroom engagement because the students will use it. The challenge for us as faculty is how do we evolve or define our curricular engagement such that the students can benefit from it. If you all may recall, there was a time in our lives where we used to do pen and paper-based essays and writing or things like that. When we took exams, we would do pen and paper, or pencil and paper. Erasing was not easy. We had to formulate our thoughts before we wrote them. Then with the advent of Word documents and things like that, we could think and type at the same time. Then we didn't have to worry about grammar or spelling mistakes because the tool will correct it for us. Then tools like Grammarly and all came, which even corrected grammar for us. So over a period of time, we have embraced technology to assist us, to assist the classroom, to assist our curricular engagement. And even when we were running the ethics workshop so wonderfully by our colleagues here, the technology and the discussion forums brought the diaspora of educators in Nigeria together. So we have embraced it to have the highest impact of educational experience that we can. The challenge I ask all of you as educators here is, we have to ask ourselves, let's not think about the technology. What can we do within our curriculum, within our pedagogy, within our evaluation of students, within our teaching of students, how to sort of use these tools? And I also recall when I was a high school student, we were not allowed to use calculators in our exams. Right? Scientific calculators were absolutely banned. They weren't even readily available. They were so expensive. And now
scientific calculators which can do derivatives and integrals and tell you sine, cosine, and everything else are allowed to be used in an examination hall. We are not questioning ourselves, why are we forgetting all the math that one should recall to use it? Because what we have figured out is it's not about knowing the exact derivative answer, it's formulating the derivative. It's formulating the expression. That's more important. And then we can get the expression calculated by something else. So it's the same thing with these chat GPT tools or Gemini tools or Granite or Llama, you name your favorite model. We have to start thinking about what's that higher order thinking. We're formulating a problem statement. Formulating a design is what we sort of evaluate and take it from there. And that sort of, leads me to the Vice Chancellor's question as well. He asked 3 things. What can AI help me to achieve? What do I need AI to do my work? Will it help me achieve my work? I do believe AI can introduce certain efficiencies in our work. AI can, and I'll talk about it tomorrow as well. AI can do certain tasks. I can automate certain tasks of my day that I can provide on AI. But the challenge to all of us is, let's say you save 30 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour every day, 2 hours every day, because now you have an AI companion. What are you going to do with that hour or 2 hours you will save every day? Right? We haven't figured out that efficiency conundrum. What we have is with AI, it's convenient, it's cute. I can give it bullet points as to what I want my email to look like, and the tool will create a beautifully, politely sounding email. And I go, wow. It says, dear this. I don't like that, but it makes that email sound polite. And everything else, it saves me time. It'll save you time. We can come up with brainstorming ideas. We can do Copilot for programming. We can do calculations and stuff like that. That will happen. And that goes back to also connects to the question of, will it replace my job? AI will, in my opinion, AI will not replace a human, but a human who uses AI will replace a human who does not use AI. Right? That is going to happen. And that's where a lot of workplace questions are even coming up as our graduates are going out to the real world. They asked about how would you use Copilot or another generative AI tool to do some task. And it just comes down to is how you can sort of get to a next order of efficiency. Every corporation, all the estimates that Nuno shared about $1 trillion economic impact estimates, today, all of them are based on we will become more efficient as a society. But what does that mean in terms of dollar value? If you can answer that, let's say we save us 40 hours a week, what we would do with those 40 hours a week that we have just saved, that's the question we need to answer as a collective versus thinking about what AI will do for us. And then as well as folks say, okay, maybe AI can, I won't need as many salespeople. Okay, but selling is an art. Selling is relationship driven. There's a lot of things that we do that are relationship driven. Can AI suddenly make your product look better that will sell? Maybe not, right? So there's a lot of these things that we don't quite know. And right now, the aura or the charm of AI is on task optimization, understanding of language, but even the language understanding that we use these tools for. Nuno's presentation with Croatia really highlighted the fact that language is very complex. Right? How do we get to understand the local context, the meaning of history, the meaning of images, the meaning of visuals? It's not apparent. And I'll share you with a story as well. So I was talking to a collaborator of mine, and he shared the story that he was speaking in a panel in Kenya, and one of the a woman, she said that, and it means something else in Swahili, but she translated it, and she said that my baby is not playing. And asked ChatGPT, that's whatever Gen AI tool they asked, and the Gen AI tool said, "Let me suggest you some other toys for the baby." What she meant in the local context was, my baby in my womb may not be healthy. And the language model is giving it suggestions for toys. Because the local context of explaining, of saying something that I'm afraid my baby may not be healthy, she was referring to that as my baby may not be in play or is not playing. But that context is important. And that's what, when you were asked, somebody asked that what happens to the rest of the world, I believe it's the idea of inclusive AI comes to, yes, there is this big tech and everything else, and that is important, necessary. And then we are also seeing the innovations that will start to happen when we start building these small localized language models that DeepSeek has also shown. And as well as Llama and the open source movement and everything else that will happen. It's amazing. But then the question is, how do we curate data in Nigeria? The Vice Chancellor shared that NOUN has 120,000 students. Right? What if these students can think about data, content, meaning, culture in the language, and there could be some opportunities to build specified, personalized language models to the context in Nigeria. Then those AI tools even become relevant. So I would not worry about it. I would ask myself, how do I make most of it? And in fact, thank the big tech for investing in hundreds of billions of dollars to build these tools. So I don't have to invest that. But I have to think about now, how do I do more with less? And that's the question with many countries in the global south today are confronting. And I think those are the right questions to ask. How do I do more with less? And that's where a lot of our research and everything else is also ongoing. Thank you.
I know you are not going to wait for me to give the rousing applause, because it's increasingly interesting as, apparently AI came with massive force that made it overwhelming, and that's why it's elicited a lot of perceptions. Accepting it became a problem. Some said they will never accept AI, but today, obviously, we cannot argue the fact that the man that is familiar with the AI will have more capacity, more efficiency, whether we like it or not. And so we have no option than to accept it. We must grab it. How to accept it is the issue. I know also that interacting with AI, we also need to train ourselves on the language to give to the AI. Because it's what you tell it that it responds. The way and manner you speak to it too. So we will begin now with virtual participants before we come back to participants. Please, do we have anybody who wants to make a contribution or ask a question? Virtual participants. Okay, who is there? Any hand raised? Professor Emeritus Professor Sogolo.
Thank you very much. I just want to raise a point. Now that the speaker has referred to the co-pilot, which helps to design, forms and so forth. It reminds me of the kind of issue we had at the university, where students were now preparing their own assignments. And it turned out that they had to consult AI, and they lifted materials. And you found that many students had identical materials and so forth. Now, I'm sure that AI will try to resolve that kind of problem. But it is disturbing to the extent that when you expect your students to apply their own intellect, all they do is to make use of AI, so that the danger you were referring to, one of the presentations, the danger you were referring to, or your report, that it tends to take off from your own natural intellect, is truly there. And I'm not too sure whether you have really said enough to say how AI can resolve those issues. In other words, between your natural intelligence and the creation of AI. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Can we have one more person participating online? Nafisat, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thanks for the thought-provoking talks. My questions are two. The first one is, sometimes I have this feeling as if AI is all about content generation. Is this? Or are there other more AI than just content prompting and all that? That's the first question. And the second question is about teaching and getting students input, getting students critical thinking at work when we have AI doing all this for us. How do lecturers, teachers, or even students on their own develop critical thinking through, a different kind of assessment with this artificial intelligence? Thank you.
Thank you. Please, the physical participants now.
Thank you very much. I try to, I understand that memory and history deal with past events. Now, for this technology, where does it tilt? Does it tilt more to memory or more to history?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to say one or two things regarding AI. And I'm sure a number of us have heard about DeepSeek. In the first instance, a younger friend of mine asked DeepSeek AI, who is Sonny Joshua Oniye. Personally, I was flabbergasted at the comical response. I'm trying to recuperate from the response. Dear colleague, this deep AI reported my humble self as a Nigerian gospel music minister, worship leader, and songwriter. He is widely recognized for his powerful and inspirational gospel songs, which have gained popularity in Nigeria and beyond. His music often focuses on themes of faith, worship, and the power of God, resonating deeply within Christian audiences. Dear colleagues and listeners, I'm of the opinion that this AI lied about me. It tarnished my academic reputation. And of course, the expectation of AI in this regard was completely defeated. So my question is this: how should I seek legal redress? Particularly when I'm also aware that a number of my students may have used AI to write a little history about me, thereby presenting me in the wrong perspective. How do we sort this type of lies? Thank you very much.
I know, Prof, you are going to rack your brains because you are not you are not lawyers, so I do not know how you respond to that litigation issue now.
Thank you. My question is related to the question just asked now. Are there chances that AI mislead, particularly in the area of research? If such happen, how can we use AI to correct the mistakes of AI? Thank you.
Prof.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Professor Gregory Okabare. AI is very relevant to our teaching, and we need to do everything to embrace it. But the responsibility here is for the teacher to guide the students to know that not everything that the AI presents to you that is correct. And so you need to be able to identify what is correct, and that is why you are the teacher, and guide the students to learn what is right. Now, I'll give you an example. Sometimes when you say, I asked a question on chat some time ago, and I said, what are the advantages of AI? And he brought out both the advantages of artificial intelligence and also the advantages of artificial insemination. Because for us in animal science, we have artificial insemination, which we use in breeding animals. Then when you ask, what is the use of AI, he brought out both. Now, it is not your responsibility to let the students know that if you are referring to artificial intelligence, you tell them this part of it is not correct because it's referring to something else. And that is because of the knowledge that you have already acquired. And so you need to guide the students to know that there is a need for them to also acquire the right knowledge, and we cannot depend entirely on AI. But AI helps us a great deal, and also providing very valuable information. And it has, over the years, helped to leverage the knowledge acquired in both developed and not developing countries because there's no restriction. So the information is there and you can use it the way you like. So much of we as teachers have a lot of work to do. Secondly, you need to also find a way to evaluate these students to bring out to what extent they understand what they ought to understand. And this is where the job of the teacher is. And that is where we need to put in more effort to ensure that the students don't just take these things hook, line, and sinker. Thank you.
I perfectly agree that AI provides assistance. And so we must continue to improve on our communication, our language with the AI, if we must get what we want. Depending completely on whatever it gives to us, we will land us somewhere else.
Thank you, sir. From my end, AI has come to stay. But how we use it is very important. What caught my interest came from the response of the last speaker on the area of creating data. So much emphasis has been put into the use of AI in education. But we have not looked into creating it and the ethical attention we need to give. How do I mean? I am a user of AI. I use it a lot. And I have equally communicated with some learning management system companies that integrated AI into their work. And there was a particular one I interacted with. How do you generate all this while developing your course content? I put in something, it brought it out very well in an interactive manner, beautiful. He said, well, you know, we go here and there to get this and integrate. So my question is this. Now we are in National Open University of Nigeria, and if we pull our data together, we have a lot of data we could utilize that we can contextualize to meet our need in the area of education, in course development, in assessment, and the like. But the ethical issue is, I am going to use somebody else's tool to integrate this. How am I sure that the data I am giving out is not being misused. If I gather the data of my students together, I'm going to use another tool to get into the machine language to pull it together. How am I sure my data is safe? How do I control my data as a university? Now, coming to the administrative aspect, which is often being undermined also when we talk about data, the use of AI in higher institutions. The administrative aspect is key. How do we safeguard using AI beyond the university where it is used, safeguard the information, the data of my staff, of the students, that to ensure that they are safe where they are going into? Because all the data you are putting in is going somewhere. Now, for the researchers, there are times you have finished your work, a full research work. You turn it into AI. You want to say, okay, what I'm doing, is it right or wrong? From researches and from what people are presenting their research outputs, they have come to say what you put into the data, the AI, whether you're using GPT, Copilot, Gemini, and the rest, that what you put in have registered. How do you monitor how your data is being used? Then the last thing now comes, who benefit most from the use of AI in the area of economic value? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that wonderful contribution. The hands keep coming up, but as the saying goes, Rome was not built in a day. Time is of essence. And so I'm going to have Prof respond to the questions very quickly, the cutting quickly.
Sure. Let me get my bearings again. Okay, so on the first question of, is AI all about generating content? Really, it's not. Most of the excellent, most productive so far applications of AI are probably not even related to generative AI. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of interesting possibilities. For example, when we were talking about drug discovery, for example, when we're trying to find new compounds that will be effective against or finding drugs that will be effective against very nasty diseases. Generative AI may have a role to play, and is already playing a role there that is particularly unique. But I should say that AI, if you want, non-generative AI has for long demonstrated its value, and without the generative part. Now, can AI be a tool for critical thinking? Now, I really think so. I think there's this may sound reductive, but if you change the interface of a system, you change the entirety of its real-world implications as well. It's more or less about affordances. It's about deciding what a tool allows you to do, what are their capabilities and how you do them. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a system to predict if someone has cancer. How will you implement that system? Is it something that someone comes in, makes an exam, the machine automatically outputs it? Or is it something where a physician will need to make a diagnosis, which after it's submitted may or may not get an indication by an automated system on, hey, be careful, there may be something here that I would recommend you looking a bit closer. This would be a way, in a very particular situation, to ensure that the human is not only in the loop, but is still in charge. And these tools are there to support their work, not in a manner that reduces their cognitive function, may cause some atrophiation there, or even in terms of cognitive offloading will go towards that route. It still requires physicians to be on point about their work, and in education is the same thing. I'm reading Sundar Khan's the CEO of Khan Academy's book on the revolution on AI. Certainly, a lot of things we don't agree, but I do agree that I see a path where you design systems for individual kind of individual tutoring that are designed in a way that promotes critical thinking, discovery of knowledge, and not quick acquisition and not worrying too much about it. It is definitely possible. Quickly on the more history or more memories in terms of the project, clearly more history. It seems that the narratives are very controlled by published historiography, and so more the academic side of things. Now, just a note, for example, concerning the Portuguese narrative in Portuguese about the Portuguese colonial wars, what I was told is that that narrative is actually more alike to the ones by Angolan historians than Portuguese historians, especially in English, which kind of makes sense because Portuguese historians tend to write in Portuguese for their journals, and other academics write in English, and so it gets more picked up. On the DeepSeek, I want to congratulate you on the very successful musical career. I cannot wait to hear that gospel. It's a very, very favorite genre on my end. Again, we talked about the foundations of these systems. I think it's important that, and this actually collates with the question after, the knowledge and the correct knowledge. We are still finding ways to ground these tools. If there is a all-encompassing final way to do that, I don't believe we don't have that. Even our books have things that are wrong that we continuously find out. Now, what the musician history that doesn't exist, that's simply an error. That's what would be called the traditional hallucination. But there are tools that can be deployed to ground these systems. Augmented search, building in chain of thought, reasoning. I mean, there are tools. So far, they are useful, but they still do not offer something that is really astonishingly reliable. But I have no doubt that they will evolve. Don't get me wrong. I think they really will evolve. And that brings me to a really important thought, which is these systems are trained to answer questions. They are not trained to ask a question, which is, do I know the answer to this? For example, we have worked with a PhD student that worked on something called conformal prediction, but regardless of that technical aspect, it's about making the question of, do I know? I don't know this. And when you're making a prediction, should you just be programmed to make that prediction regardless of knowing? Or is that a first step that you should do? I think that's a very interesting direction that I feel we're already headed there, and results should be very interesting. Just the final one in terms of the data and making sure my data is safe. data is a new form of oil. And if we know anything about modern history concerning that particular resource, is that countries will go to war for it. And data is extremely important. And all of these larger companies, data is critical to their operation. So is there ways to keep your data safe? Sure. It will probably require a lot of regulation and laws being passed. Europe has tried that with GDPR, avoiding that, for example, that data concerning individuals leaves the European space. But that does not mean by any chance that that data is not used for other things within the space of Europe. And so I just want to leave this, pass on to Nitesh. Given the scope of this particular university, I would really say that given the research that you've already built, the capacity that you have, you are particularly poised to research further into this idea of the value of education. You have 120,000 students on an online setting. I think there's a genuinely unique positioning on your end to offer ideas, debates, and even proposals, ways of approaching this problem or challenge, I would say, that I'm very excited to see what you do next. Concerning data, how you use AI or don't use AI, what works, what doesn't, how do you collate all of this given just the massive amount of people that are involved in this education ecosystem. I'm really glad to be here and have learned about all of that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I would sort of, club a few questions. One was on critical thinking, how do we teach that? And the other one as well was the responsibility we teachers have. And the dialogue we were having made me realize one thing. What we haven't figured out is how to assess learning outcomes of students. That if we give them an assignment and they use ChatGPT, of course, if the assignment was to create a bio of our esteemed colleague, they would, either that's the internal profession you're yearning for, to be a gospel singer, or and ChatGPT, DeepSeek saw that. But the point here is that assessment is something that we haven't figured out. We are afraid about how they'll do their assignments, how they'll do their exams. But what we are not worried about is, how do we teach them? We should still teach them to be the critical thinkers. We should still teach them to be the problem solvers. We should still teach them to be the seekers of the truth. We should still teach them to be collaboration, teamwork. All of these are super skills of this century, that they are required to have these super skills. And then we have to reflect on our own pedagogy and say that if I am afraid of them using a generative AI tool to assist them in their essay responses or questions and answers and things like that, then I may want to change my testing instrument. But my teaching, my engagement with the students in the classroom really is not changing. My assessment is changing. My evaluation of their learning outcomes is changing. How do I give them a quiz or an exam is changing. Maybe we need to do more oral viva examinations like I used to do when I was in engineering. That went away. Maybe we have to change that structure. Or maybe we need to give them more class projects. That like I teach a class called AI and Society, and in my class, the students are spending their time doing case study, exploration, and I make them really think about the project or the problem they are trying to solve. Who are the stakeholders? How would they engage with them? How will they collect the data? Everything that we have talked about through the various questions, I have the students reflect on that for their specific project in their specific writing. Then how they do that project, whether they use Copilot or they use anything or they use some programming tools or open source material or things like that, I could care less, to be honest. Because I'm focused more on them becoming the thinkers, the problem solvers, having teamwork, being able to be communicative, being creative. Those are the super skills that I want to empower them with, versus worrying about did they use a particular code from something that they shouldn't have used. And then as well as that, yes, I do appreciate that all of these tools hallucinate. They may not be fully reliable, which is also a good thing, because that Nuno was sharing a story about a student who got an F because the student straight copied from the output of a Gen AI tool. Well, they have to still be able to evaluate, is the answer that the Gen AI tool is giving me is accurate or not. That's on them. Right? You won't grade the Gen AI tool, you would grade them. So, but this is also a technology which is going to get better and smarter over a period of time. And the expectations that we are imposing, I mean, let's face it, right? We humans, we hallucinate. Hallucinate is a good meaning of saying, did these tools distort the facts? These tools exaggerate. These tools make up stories. I can guarantee you, we all know one person in this world who would be exaggerating, who would be distorting facts, who would be making up facts, making up stories. And you know that person, and we are forgiving. We accept it, right? So at this moment in time, we have to be a bit accepting of that machine, which is giving us this answer, but knowing that this machine is capable of all those imperfections that we all have. The virtues we are expecting of this machine, we have to also balance it with the virtues we expect of each other and accept of each other, right? So there is still ways to go, and the question comes to us is, how do we make them, they are here, they are not going away. The amount of investment that has been made, this technology is here, let's not run from it, let's embrace it to the best we can, let's localize it, let's figure out that our friend asked at the corner over there, the concerns about data, the data privacy, what happens when we give our students data, our assessment data to these tools. Let's understand those things. What are the terms and conditions? Let's figure out, if we can't give our data, there are these open source models that are available, and I can customize them to build on my smaller NOUN data repository. That could be a research project to begin with, as part of the work that has been so wonderfully kickstarted by Professor Helen and Felix here, right? So there are these things. I may be an optimist. It's here. It's to us how to embrace it. It has its imperfections. Let's be aware and acknowledge those imperfections. And of course, if this DeepSeek or ChatGPT ever gives you an answer when you ask who is Nitesh Chavla, and it says Nitesh Chavla is the biggest rock star in the world, has created the best-selling album, is a Grammy Award winner, I would always believe it, because that's my inner aspiration. I cannot sing for nuts, but I wish I could sing. So if ChatGPT or DeepSeek can see that inner aspiration of mine, please believe it and congratulate me for being the rock star. And maybe I need to change the data that goes in. And ChatGPT, and one more thing I would point out is, we are right now so excited about AI is because we are seeing it up close, personal as individuals. Is disrupting our daily lives because of generative AI, content generation, image generation, and all that jazz, being able to answer the exams, It's at the end of the day an auto-regressive model. It does probabilistic lookup. But we've been using AI for credit loan, for disease prediction. Machine learning has been used for almost every sector before we had chat GPTs of the world. It has been there. What is concerning us is its ability to create content that looks and feels the way it does. Its ability to answer questions that are in exams. Its ability to create code. But at the end of the day, it's creating answers. It's responding to the questions that you're asking, and it's a massive approximate retrieval lookup table, and it's the huge memory bank it has, and it's giving answers to. It's the data that we have fed to it, the logic, the GitHub code that Copilot uses is a code that was created by humans. Right? So we are the content creators for these tools. The challenge we will have is the fake information that's going to be created by these tools, or the misinformation, and the truth and the facts will be all mixed up as we go forward. Our ability to distill what was a fact versus what was machine generated will not be there. So I think those are the questions that we still need to ask. But AI has been around. We have all been touched by AI, whether we're using Amazon or for shopping, or Netflix for movies, or Spotify for music, or Apple for anything, Google search. We have been a customer of AI. Any direct marketing tools that we ever embraced, we have been a customer of AI for a long, long time. It's just now it's front of us and creating content that we never saw it created.
I completely agree that we must fight a situation where we have digital students in the hands of analog teachers. Now, with an AI-generated applause and smile, say thank you to Professor Nuno Moniz, Director, IBM Tech Ethics Lab, University of Notredame, and Professor Nitesh Chawla, Director, Lucy Family Institute, University of Notredame. I say AI-generated applause, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, Rome was not built in a day. This is just the first day, day one of the event. And so been directed to inform us that those who have questions or contributions, please put pen to paper and submit them at the registration desk. We'll take them first thing tomorrow morning as we converge again at 10 a.m. here. Now, everything here today, the language is AI. The launch is not AI. And so because launch is not AI, keep your tickets close to your chest. As soon as lunch is ready, you will be served. Please exercise a little patience. Lunch will get to you because lunch is not AI, but keep your tickets, please. We'll have lunch is ready and we'll soon give them to you. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Olufemi Peters, the principal officers here present, visitors, the entire NOUN Notredame team. We appreciate all of you for being part of this event. And it's on that note, we draw the curtain for the first day of the workshop on ethics and sustainability of artificial intelligence in higher education.